first year playing fantasy football, or if you've been playing for years, we are here to help bring you to a championship. Joining me are 20-year fantasy football veterans, the commish, Henry Brick, and the professor, Steve Wynn. Together, we're going to take you around the NFL for the latest news and injuries, our projections for your draft, and everything you need to have a truly kick-ass season. We're going to take your calls throughout the show and answer any draft questions you have. We'll also go over our staff's players to target and players to avoid, as well as a look at ADPs and how players are stacking up. Oh, and one more thing, we got free tickets to the Fantasy Football Fest to give away. Guys, man, welcome to the show.
Matt, great to be here. We have a huge program. We got great guests to have on our program today to get everybody ready for the big draft coming up.
Yeah, we got a week of training camps in the books. We got loads of injuries, news, training camp battles. It is on. NFL is back.
All right, and I want to remind everyone you can check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com for all your fantasy football information. We got articles covering every team and every player you will want to keep your eye out for, as well as those to stay away from. And the best is our projection tool that allows you to customize our projections for the season to your own scoring system. And once your season starts, you will get weekly projections for every player, again, completely customized to your scoring system. So cruise into a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com. And if you guys got any questions out there for our guys, give us a call, 609-573-ESPN. That's 609-573-3776. We'll get them on the air. And you know what? Let's give away some tickets, too. So first caller that calls in, you're getting a free pair of tickets to the Fantasy Football Fest at the Atlantic City Convention Center, August 18th and 19th. So give us a call.
That's a $180 value. I think it's $55 the first day, $35 the second day. So a lot of big NFL stars at the Fantasy Fest. This is a nice giveaway we've got.
There you go.
That's right. You got Joe Montana's going to be there, Lawrence Taylor, Otis Anderson, Joe Theismann, Phil Simms, and the list goes on. That's huge.
Mike Vick will be there. There are a number of present-day Eagles players on the list. So,
all right, and LaShawn McCoy, he's going to be there too.
That's right. LaShawn McCoy is going to be at the Fantasy Fest. We're hoping to get him in our booth. We'll be down there broadcasting August 19th. We'll have a 2-hour show, 2-hour special right at the Fantasy Fest. You can come down and check us out. We'll be at the ESPN booth, and we'll have plenty of interviews, lots of great giveaways. And Matt, most importantly, and we're going to start that special today. If you subscribe to our website for just $9.95, you get a free cruise for 2 to the Bahamas and a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com.
All right. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's see who won these tickets. Jim, welcome to the show, man.
How are you?
Not too bad. So you're going to be able to make it August 18th and 19th?
Yes, I will.
All right. And now, you got one condition. You got to stop by and see us at our booth. No problem there, right?
Got it. That's no problem.
So who are you most excited about seeing there? Montana, Vic, who are you looking forward to?
You know what? I really was unaware of it until I drive and listen to your show on the radio. All of them. Anybody. That's great. I'm really excited.
It's going to be fun. There's also a tailgate fest going on out in the parking lot. So lots of football players inside, a lot of great food outside.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they got the NFL experience going on down there. Of course, we'll be on the main strip across from the bar. So
that's right. When you get a beer, we'll be right across from the beer.
That sounds great, guys.
All right, thanks for calling in, Jim. Hold on the line, and our producer will get your information from you. Hold on.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, let's talk about some injuries. We got the Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. He revealed an existing rotator cuff tear. Kamish, what's going on there?
Well, he's had this injury since last year, he says, but Big Ben is a prima donna, likes to let everybody know what's going on so that if he messes up, he has the injury to go back to. Guess what? I don't think it hurts him too bad. If he's played through it last year, he'll play through it again this year.
All right, and we move on over to the Jets. Wide receiver Santonio Holmes has a broken rib. Professor, what's up?
It might be a little bit of karma coming back and hitting Santonio Holmes. He's been a voice of dissent in the offseason. Really unproven wide receiver core up in New York this year. These guys have got to get on the right page. They've got a lot of news, a lot of activity going on up there, and this is the last thing they need is their star wide receiver going out for a significant period of time.
All right, and we move on over to the Seahawks. Wide receiver Sidney Rice had tears in both shoulders, surgery to repair them in the offseason. How's he looking, Commish?
Well, Pete Carroll is going to take it real slow with Rice. He's obviously the bell cow there at wide receiver. Fantasy owners won't likely see him till week 1 of the regular season.
That's rough, man. 360-degree tears in both shoulders, man. That's significant surgery.
Now, are you moving him down your list at all, Rice, because of this?
You know what? Absolutely, right now, especially until we see what's going to go on at the quarterback position there.
Yeah, he's somebody you got to see in preseason games before you think about taking him as a starter.
Okay. And we move on over to the Bills. We got wide receiver Stevie Johnson with a groin injury. What's going on there?
Stevie Johnson, off-season groin surgery. He is back in camp. He's working through the rehab. He is quoted as saying, "I don't feel anything in my groin, so I'm pretty good." Fantasy owners happy about that? Boy, not so much.
Always look to you, Professor.
Somebody's got to bring the level down here, yes.
There you go. All right, let's go on over to the Cardinals. Running back Beanie Wells. He has that something going on with his knee. What's up, Commish?
Well, you know, he opened up the preseason on the PUP list. May see practice next week. May see action before the end of the preseason. This definitely opens up the window for Ryan Williams, who spent the 2011 season on the IR, but is active in training camp and practices and taking contact well so far.
Yeah, Ryan Williams might be a sleeper if they can get the rest of that offense together.
Okay, and let's go back on over to the Steelers. Rashard Mendenhall, torn ACL, out for the foreseeable future. Wow. Professor?
Well, we've known that Mendenhall was going to be on the shelf for some time. This week, he said that there was no timetable for his return. I loved Isaac Redman last week as a value play. Love him even more. You might even want to look at Jonathan Dwyer as a handcuff late in your draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Isaac Redman show, I think, this year, Professor.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we move on over to the Lions. Running back Javad Best. He's out for several weeks with a concussion. Commish?
Yeah, you know what? Look for Kevin Smith to be the man there. You got Javad Best with this major concussion problem. You got Mikel Ashore, who's going to be out the first 2 games with substance abuse violations. So Kevin Smith, as long as he remains healthy, will be the man there.
And he's looking good in preseason games.
Okay.
And going in the 10th round in drafts so far. So
great value in the draft. Yeah.
So grab him in the 10th if you can. All right, we move on over to the Broncos. Wide receiver Eric Decker, groin strain. Professor?
Groin strain. Nothing to do with how happy he is to be playing with Peyton Manning. He will work through that. and actually, I'm going to give a little props here to the commish. Demaryius Thomas is looking fantastic in that camp. So Thomas looks like your guy in regular leagues, Eric Decker in PPR leagues. But both of those guys are looking fantastic.
Do we have to basically agree now that Peyton Manning just makes wide receivers much better than what they really are?
Are you kidding, Matt? He's going to make these wide receivers better, the tight ends better, and guess what? The defense is even going to be better. I figure once they get up by about 17 points, unleash Elvis Dumerville.
There you go.
All right, let's move on over to the Saints. Running back Mark Ingram, turf toe. What's going on there, Professor?
Mark Ingram's got turf toe. He's limited in camp. He's rehabbing from 2 off-season surgeries. He's definitely a guy to watch. They've got a stable of running backs in New Orleans, so keep an eye on it. We'll give you a lot more updates on Ingram and the whole Saints situation as we get closer to your fantasy drafts. But you want to be moving him down.
Hopefully, with this turf toe injury, it's going to give him plenty of time to get that thing healed, because that's usually one of those lingering problems, especially fantasy.
Well, he had the surgery, so hopefully it's a little less than when they just
have to battle through it. Yeah, it can take some time. All right, we move on over to the Jaguars. Wide receiver Laurent Robinson got a concussion. What's going on there, Commish?
Wow, maybe back for the start of the season, but this concussion and Justin Blackman's off-field issues are affecting the establishment of the Jaguar passing game. This is going on to hurt Blaine Gabbert's ability to get his timing with his receivers. So if MJD were in camp, he might be the guy who benefits.
Yeah, so we're down the 2 starting wide receivers. You down MJD, and you've got Blaine Gabbert as your starting quarterback.
Not a good thing.
Stay away from the Jaguars.
I believe I'm screening calls. They're calling me. They're so desperate for anyone on that offense right now. All right, we move on over to the Eagles, and we got Brent Selleck with a sprained MCL. What's going on there?
Well, he's on the treadmill day to day at this point. Look for Clay Harbor to step in if Saul can't get back, but I think we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have, let's stick with the Eagles. Riley Cooper broke his collarbone, had surgery. He's out for 6 weeks.
Well, this opens up the competition for who's going to play in the slot. Riley Cooper, a big guy. They've got a couple of rookies. They're looking for somebody to complement the speed of Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. So it's an open camp competition for that spot right now on opening day.
Okay, and let's move on over to the Ravens. Tight end Peta, broken hand. What's up with that? Commissioner, is he someone we should be looking at? Or?
Well, the Ravens are hoping that he can return by the end of preseason. Once again, we have plenty of time, so time heals all wounds.
Yeah, it's a broken hand, and he's probably not a fantasy starter, so not a big deal, but a broken hand will keep him out sometime.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about the Broncos one more time. Running back Noshawn Marino, torn ACL. What does this do to him?
Moreno's still in a knee brace. The team drafted Ronnie Hillman. He's injured, so it was going to be a passing offense out in Denver this year. Expect them to focus in that direction, at least to start the season.
Yeah, I like Ronnie Hillman, and at some point to possibly take over the starting position during the season, so definitely got to keep targeted.
All right, and when we come back, we're going to get into more preseason news. We're going to give away more tickets to the Fantasy Football Fest here in Atlantic City Convention Center, as well as our expert draft strategies that'll help you cruise into a championship. You are listening to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show here on 97.3 ESPN. Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Now put your fantasy skills into the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Draft your team and then manage it through a 10-week regular season, a 1-week elimination round, and finally, if you're good enough, a 64-team tournament that will determine the first ever Fantasy Football Evolution champion. The winner of Fantasy Football Evolution receives $25,000, cash prizes paid to the top 16 players. Visit www.nextgenffe.com for more details. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
and me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit powerplayfantasysports.com today. And we are back. This is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show, and we are here to help you cruise into a championship. All right, guys, we got more news to cover real quick. We got the Cleveland Browns were sold this week by the Lerner family, who are now focusing on their soccer team?
That's right. The Browns owners focused on their soccer team. They got out of the NFL. The Browns have been scoring like a soccer team in recent years, so this is probably a good move for the learners. And the new owner is currently a minority owner of the Steelers, Jimmy Haslam. He is the Flying J truck stop magnate. He is a football guy. He knows his stuff. He's going to have to divest himself from the Steelers. You know, it's nice having a truck stop guy in a big position in the NFL. There will be Slim Jims and caffeine pills for everyone.
Yes. As a matter of fact, well, he does have to sell his rights to the Steelers to take complete ownership of the Browns. And guess what, guys? He sold it for $1 billion.
The Browns for $1 billion.
Wow.
Insane.
If the Browns sell for $1 billion, I mean, what does that make, good teams worth?
Like the Jacksonville Jaguars?
The Jacksonville Jaguars. Was that at least? I think I got $50 in my pocket.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, we got a special guest with us right now. We got Mike Gardner of Power Play Fantasy Sports on to talk about how you can win $5,000. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Morning, guys. How you doing today?
Great, Mike. Great to have you on with us.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about Power Play Fantasy Sports. How is it that our listeners can win some money with you guys?
Basically, we're PowerPlayFantasySports.com. We're a fantasy sports website that offers free and pay-to-play fantasy football games. Right now, we have both team and player contests. Our flagship contest is our Power Player Fantasy Football. We tried to put a bit of a unique spin on the standard fantasy formats, trying to keep our contestants engaged for the entire year. Everything we do is done in cash prizes, weekly prizes, $5,000 payout at the end of season for our player contest. We basically just wanted to make fantasy accessible and entertaining for all players, whether new to the game or whether they've been playing since the 90s like we have. We tried to come up with something a little bit different than what's out there on the board for most players as it is.
So, Mike, if I wanted to run my league through your site, I could adjust the scoring and the different rules that my league carries?
No, the way we run it actually is we don't do the standard 10, 12-team fantasy leagues that most people are involved in. We have one giant league for all the players that want to be involved. Essentially, what it works for the player contest is we give you matchups week to week. Say Breeze versus Manning, Rodgers versus Brady.
Okay.
You pick whichever quarterback you want based on that. We do the same thing: receivers, running backs, tight ends, defenses, kickers. You build your team each week, and then this way you are competitive each week as moving forward. You're not crippled by Adrian Peterson tearing his MCL or Jamal Charles ruining your fantasy season after week 1 last year, which happened to me several different leagues, actually. So
you
looked at those things all over the years, and we tried to find a way to keep it competitive for everybody involved as they keep moving forward, not abandoning their team after week 5 like a lot of players do.
All right, and the big payout at the end of the season is $5,000?
Yeah, we have a $5,000 grand prize. It's over $15,000 for the entire season with weekly prizes and for secondary prizes. So we're happy with the numbers that we're getting, and we're hoping to just keep moving onward and upward with it.
All right, and where can people check you out at?
We're at PowerPlayFantasySports.com. We have, like I said, our flagship contest is the player contest. We have a free team contest to go with it as well. That also pays out in cash. We're doing hockey once hockey starts up. We have our sidelines blog. We have a player stat analyzer there for getting ready for your fantasy drafts. You can compare player stats from last year compared to this year's projections, player versus player, position versus position. We've got over the top 300 prospects in there, so it's something to look at.
All right, sounds good. Hey, we always like letting our listeners know ways they can win money playing fantasy football. So we appreciate the call, and you can check them out again. Where are you at, Mike?
We're at PowerPlayFantasySports.com, and we are going to be down at the Football Festival in Atlantic City with you guys, actually, too.
That's right. So make sure you check them out there. In fact, we're giving away free tickets all show long. And so here's going to be the requirement for the next set of tickets. You got to promise you're going to check out Mike and Power Play Fantasy Sports at the show. You got to stop by and say hi. Sound good, Mike?
I love that, actually. And I heard you guys are right by the beer tent. I was listening last week. I think we're just a couple booths over from you.
That's right. When we were talking in negotiations on going there, we were like, we have to be by the beer. I mean,
Yeah.
Especially the professor. He's a bit of an alcoholic. So.
Oh, no. That's not
Fair
true.
enough. I'm pretty sure it goes hand in hand with what most companies wanted when they set up down there, so I get it.
That's right. All right. Thanks for the call, Mike, and we'll see you at the Fantasy Football Fest August 18th and 19th.
Right on. Thanks for having me, guys. See you down there.
See ya. All right, and let's go back to the phones. We got a caller, Rob from Brigantine, on the phone. Rob, welcome to the show. What's your question, man?
Hey, guys. Love the new time slot, and that prior call was great. I'm definitely going to check him out.
All right.
Fantasy Fest.
Yeah, look at that. He promised to check out the guy at the Fantasy Football Fest, Mike, with Power Play Fantasy Sports. So you know what? You got a set of tickets coming your way, too.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you got a question for us?
Yeah, I read the article by the professor on drafting tight ends.
You know what, Rob? We got a full segment on that.
I'm ready for you, Professor.
But go ahead. This is a good segue into what. So go ahead, Rob.
Well, actually, I've had pretty good success with that in the past couple of years. Actually, it got me to a championship one year. I just wanted to know the commission's opinion on starting two tight ends. Say if you have a stud tight end and an average tight end, and maybe you're a little weak at receiver.
Okay, well, before you answer that, Commissioner, let's let our listeners know the article in question. Professor, you're actually suggesting that people, if you have a late round pick in the first round, to possibly go tight end.
Yeah, if you are picking 12th in fantasy drafts this year, if you're in a 12-team league, and you've got a flex position, and a majority of leagues have a flex position now, you can think about going tight end at the 12 spot this year. Now, you're going to pick that first tight end, Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham, and most of your league is going to say, well, that's a reach. You're nuts. These guys are both in the 15, 14 spot.
Right.
You're jumping up, taking them at 12. When you take the second one of those guys, everyone in your league is going to drop an expletive on you because you have just taken the only two guys that give you a significant advantage at tight end. Rob mentions having taken tight ends in the past and using them effectively. I'm a guy who has always been a proponent, if there is a breakout tight end, taking them in the third round, which is very early in years past. Now we're talking about the first and second. Last year, Rob Gronkowski scored 241 fantasy points, and Jimmy Graham scored 197 in standard scoring.
Right.
Not even PPR. The rest of the tight ends that would start in fantasy scored between 130 and 108.
Wow.
So Gronkowski gave you a 7.5 points per game advantage over over most other teams at that position. Graham gives you 4.5 points advantage over teams at that position. You take both of these guys, you drop one of them in at the tight end, one of them in at flex, where most teams are starting their third wide receiver.
Sure.
You got a 10, 12-point advantage every week of the season.
Well, Commissioner, he's got numbers to back him and a really long-looking spreadsheet kind of thing. Well, what do you got?
Listen, these are compelling numbers, and he's done some amazing research, as always, the professor does. However, there is a couple little holes I'd like to point out in his story here. The first thing is we're living in last year's statistics. Okay? If we could all see what the future is and play fantasy, we'd all do, of course, much better. The professor also talks about unsustainable numbers. Let's talk about what Gronkowski did. He had 90 catches for 1,327 yards, 17 touchdowns. Unsustainable. Why is it unsustainable? We talked about it last week. They have 7 tight ends, guys. 7 tight ends. Not only is it Hernandez, but they have Tyler Urban, Bo Scaife, Daniel Fells, Jake Ballard, and of course they signed Vashante.
Let me throw one thing at you, though, Commissioner. You are the king of trades. At the very least, if you have the 2 top tight ends in there, What could you turn that into, Commish? I mean,
well,
does not have a valid point there?
You could absolutely. You could turn that into a lot. There's no doubt about that. I'm just talking about, when the reasons why he's drafted is he said
throw it in your flex.
He wants to break the league, and my thing is it's impact players.
Okay, well that is a perfect segue, Commish. Impact players. How many players in the NFL give you that kind of advantage, 5 points or 7 points at their position for fantasy purposes, in fantasy scoring? 6 guys. You know who it is? I'm going to tell you.
Well, okay. While you go through your list, Rob, we appreciate the question and getting this all scored up. Do me a favor. Hold on the line. My producer's going to get your information for your tickets, and appreciate bringing the argument up to bear.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Matt, before we get into this, because I got a good defense. Do you need to go to break?
No, go ahead, Professor.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Arian Foster, Tom Brady, Ray Rice, LaShawn McCoy, Calvin Johnson. Those are the only guys that give you more point advantage at their position than the 2 guys, Gronkowski and Graham.
That's according to last year's stats.
And hold on. Even if you pull Gronkowski and Graham back to the norm, back to what you think that they're going to score this year, you'll get 4 points out of Graham on our own projections, on our own website, Commish. Your projections, I think you did tight ends.
I did, matter of fact, but I have Gronk back down to 12 touchdowns this year, only 80 catches for about 1,119 yards.
Yes, but that's still 75, 80 points more than the 3rd through 12th tight ends.
Let's face it, even if Gronkowski does come down, I mean, these are still the 2 elite tight ends.
Oh, I do not dispute that. I do not dispute that. They are the 2 elite tight ends. I just think there are better opportunities out there.
At the end of round 1 and 2.
And I think you'll like Cam Newton. If I'm picking at that number.
At 12, 13?
You would take Cam Newton in the first round.
Absolutely. Cam Newton is going to be a top stud quarterback once again this season, as you can see on our projections at kickasfantasyfootball.com.
All right. Well, now we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into more battles and holdouts that are going on with NFL news, and these guys during the break can have their little fist fight, and we can find out who's going to win. You are listening to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show here on 97.3 ESPN.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Now put your fantasy skills in the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Draft your team and then manage it through a 10-week regular season, a 1-week elimination round, and finally, if you're good enough, a 64-team tournament that will determine the first ever Fantasy Football Evolution champion. The winner of Fantasy Football Evolution receives $25,000, cash prizes paid to the top 16 players. Visit www.nextgenffe.com for more details. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and kickassfantasyfootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95 and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for 2 to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit powerplayfantasysports.com today.
And we are back. This is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. and we are here to help you cruise into a championship. If you got any questions about your draft, give us a call, 609-573-ESPN. That's 609-573-3776. We'll get them on the air. All right, guys. We were fighting a little bit last segment about our tight end theory that the professor has. And again, you can read all about that on www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. He has a very well-written article that really explains his position in this. And the big thing that you're saying with this is you can break a lot of leagues. Isn't that right, Professor?
You are basically giving yourself a 5-point advantage at one spot and a 4-point advantage at the other spot. There's nobody outside of the first round that's produced statistics like that. So you're giving yourself almost a 10-point advantage going into every game.
And most importantly, you are pissing people off.
And that is the funnest part of this thing is that everybody is going to watch Gronkowski go off in the first round or Graham, and then watch the other one go off, and whatever their plan was to take them in the early third or the late second, like Rob might have been thinking, they're gone. And you have made the rest of the tight ends worth as much as kickers, and we don't talk about kickers on the show.
We do not talk about kickers on the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. All right, and Commissioner, real quick before we get back to some of the battles and all that's going on in training camp, if you don't like that, where would you put those two? Where would you take them at? Would you do it at the end of the second round?
Yeah, I mean, I think these guys will probably go in the second round in most drafts. You know, I always like to take a tight end in the third or fourth round, but, you know, giving the statistics that these players put out last season, I see them absolutely going in the second round.
All right. And you know what? Let's give away some more tickets. Next caller who calls in.
With a fantasy question.
With a fantasy question. That's right. Can be any fantasy question. Give us a call, 609-573-ESPN. That's 609-573-3776. And we'll send you to the Fantasy Football Fest at the Atlantic City Convention Center August 18th and 19th for free. All right, guys. While we wait for that, let's talk a bit. Mike Wallace continues to hold out. What is going on there?
Well, you know, we talked about this a little bit last week, Matt, and, this is just bad news for the Steelers, especially Wallace's fantasy value. It really hurts Big Ben's fantasy value. Emmanuel Sanders might be the beneficiary as he moves into the starting role, but with no sign of Wallace, I mean, you got to really look at other options at the wide receiver position.
Okay, and I got to give a little love to our website designer. He is a big Miami Dolphins fan, so we got to talk a little bit about it and what is going on there at quarterback between Matt Moore and Garrett. What do you think, Professor?
Well, Matt Moore and David Garrard are seeing all of the first team work, so the perception is that is that's the battle going on down in Miami's training camp. Ryan Tannehill is the face of the future for Miami, but he is unlikely to start the season. I think he comes in probably around week 6 or week 7, but no Miami quarterback is worth taking in any fantasy draft this year.
No, I mean, Garrard, I think, maybe has a slight edge so far in camp, but stay away from the quarterbacks in Miami right now.
Can we think who on the offense do we like in Miami? Is there?
Oh, we got a couple.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Reggie Bush.
Reggie Bush.
Daniel Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys can end up putting up big numbers since they're not going to be able to pass the ball too well.
Probably not Chad Johnson. Yeah,
Ocho Cinco, Chad Johnson.
Yeah, back to Chad.
Probably not so much.
Yeah.
And we got to just say, Hard Knocks. Are we watching it with the Miami Dolphins this season?
Yeah, I mean, you watch with especially Chad Johnson talking about his speed. I'm like, come on. After he puts the walker down to do the interview, it's hysterical.
Definitely has lost a step or three.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on over. Jake Locker appears to be winning the competition with Matt Hasselbeck with the Titans. Commish?
Yeah, Jake Locker has huge upside, higher quality backup quarterback for fantasy purposes. Dynasty leagues, this is a guy you probably want to target late in your draft, and a guy that can end up doing some big things for you in the future here. I love what he's bringing to the table, and I'm loving that he's going to and should be starting this season.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to start the entire season, barring injuries. So he's definitely one of those guys that you can count on. And he'll have some growing pains, but if they can get Kenny Britt's head straight on, he's got an excellent target there too.
And what do you think of him in Dynasty leagues, Professor?
Dynasty, he's somebody that I would stash away on my bench for future seasons. Certainly, I think he's got the opportunity to be top 5 guy about 2-3 years out.
He's a guy you take in the late rounds, and when you give up draft picks for the following years, you're going to give up nothing for this guy. So it's a great high quality pick. I agree, Professor.
All right, and now Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller both are fighting it out for that starting running back job. Who's going to win that, Commish?
Well, you know what? I think Jackson will start. Spiller will be heavily used because he's just a talented running back, which, unfortunately for fantasy does make it tough.
Yeah.
Really, when they split the carries like that.
This is what I thought was going to happen last year, and I really undervalued Fred Jackson because I thought C.J. Spiller was going to take that job. Spiller had a great second half of the season after Fred Jackson broke his leg. So both of these guys will split time. Spiller, he's an exciting guy. He's got a lot of speed and a lot of move. So,
all right, Tavares Jackson took the first snaps as the quarterback in camp over Matt Flynn, who, let's face it, Matt Flynn looked pretty good. What are we thinking there, Professor?
You know what? I was very surprised by this because I thought Matt Flynn was going to be the guy, and having Tavares Jackson take the snaps, I'm wondering what they're thinking up in Seattle. Frankly, I'm always wondering what they're thinking up in Seattle. That's one of those teams that baffles me on a regular basis.
Yeah, cream always rises to the top. Matt Flynn will be the starting quarterback there. They didn't bring him in there to sit on the bench behind Tavares Jackson.
No, they did not.
All right, let's move on over to the Buccaneers. Doug Martin's going to start over LeGarrette Blount. Is that true, Commish?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last week, Matt. He's a young, versatile back, and the team really likes to be more the first and second down back. But guess what? He has the capability of even taking the goal line back. So I think they're tired of Blount, dancing behind the line of scrimmage and losing the football. So I know the professor loves Martin. He's a guy I think you could target early. He's moving up in most drafts right now. He's a guy you definitely want on your fantasy team this year.
Yeah, the commish mentions first down back, second down back, goal line back. He's also got better hands than LeGarrette Blount, so he's the third down guy, and he's better in pass protection. He's a guy that's moving up my draft boards. I could see him being a high-quality running back one if you don't get one of the studs in the first round.
Okay. Let's go on over to San Diego there, Professor. Robert Meacham, Malcolm Floyd, or Vincent Brown to start?
You know what? This is one of those ones that right now it is a toss-up. Any one of those three guys are possible to start now that Vincent Jackson is gone. This is one you're going to have to watch the training camp. You're going to have to read up on kickassfantasyfootball.com and see how it's progressing, because right now it's anybody's game.
Yeah, actually, I have this a little bit later on the show. I talk a little bit about this, but it looks like Meacham and Floyd are your starters with Eddie Royal in the slot. So I think Vincent Brown gets playing time once one of these guys get injured.
Okay, let's move on over to the Cardinals. Kevin Kolb, right now he's penciled in as the starter quarterback over John Skelton, but we know that's been back and forth, really, really close, Commish. Do you think that's going to be it going forward?
I'm a Kevin Kolb fan, and he's gone through a lot of different crazy injuries, but I think right now money's talking, and tonight obviously is the first preseason game of the year, and he's getting the nod. So they're going to give him an opportunity to keep the starting role, but I don't know if that he'll be able to sustain that.
Okay, and then we got Danny Amendola, Brian Quick, or Chris Givens to start as wide receiver in St. Louis. What do you think there, Professor?
Well, you know what? Brian Quick was one of the commission's guys last week to keep an eye on, but Chris Givens has moved ahead of him for that starting job. Both of these guys have a lot of talent. I think it's another one that's going to go through the entirety of training camp, but right now you got to give the edge to Chris Givens.
Okay, and I have to ask, I don't believe there were any new arrests, were there? Or is the NFL actually made it through a week without anyone going to jail?
As much as Drew Brees says that you can't trust Commissioner Goodell, apparently he's scaring some people
Goodell,
straight.
Let's make sure we...
Yeah.
That's amazing.
All right, guys. I want to talk a bit about another article we got up on the site. You can check it out. It's www.kickassfantasyfootball.com, and really good stuff. It was a breakout of the NFC East, and players to really watch this year, the top players. This was done by one of our interns. I want to see what you guys think and who's missing off the list. All right, they got at number 5 Robert Griffin III. Do you agree that he would be up there? Where's he going to go? Do you think second round, third round?
You saying he's number 5 quarterback in a 14 division, or what do you got here?
Yeah, really. I mean, I think he's at best a number 2, a late round draft pick. I'm not looking for RG3 to be my number 1 at all.
Now, in fact, the NFC East has got an embarrassment of riches at quarterback with Vic, Romo, and Manning, all of whom should be fantasy starters.
Well, right ahead of him, he does have Vic. I mean, are we expecting the big bounce back by Vic this year?
I really am. I mean, I think Vic has his weapons back. Deshaun Jackson. I'm sorry. He has his head back on straight. He got paid. He got his contract. He's saying all the right things. I think Macklin is going to have a tremendous season. McCoy is just going to continue to blow it up. I think Vic, they're teaching him to slide, so rather than get crushed. So I look for big things from Michael Vick this year.
Yeah, as a lifetime Eagles fan, I've learned not to embrace them fully because they hurt me. they hurt the ones that love them the most. But I do have high hopes for the Eagles this year. I think that all the things that we thought they might do last year are possibilities in 2012.
All right, but let's talk a minute about Vic. And he is injury prone. I mean, let's face it, when he's playing, he's incredible. But what do fantasy owners do when he's out for 3 games out of the year? I mean, are you still putting him in that top 5 quarterbacks or so?
You know what? I do have him in the top 5 at quarterback. The drop off is a little bit more severe. Vince Young and the Dream Team have left for Buffalo from Philadelphia. So, but Mike Kafka, not so much. They do have Trent Edwards, who is a talented guy. But if Vic does get injured, I think the Eagles' season might be over.
Yeah, and as of most teams, when your starter goes down, it really breaks the back of your team. But once again, the Eagles have one of the best offensive lines in football, and with him learning to slide, I think it can only improve his game. Receivers getting open like Deshaun Jackson, doing the things that he's supposed to do, will help tremendously too.
All right, another quarterback he mentions, Eli Manning. Let's face it. He did win the Super Bowl.
A second Super Bowl. And he's still underrated.
And insane. I mean, is there a little Rodney Dangerfield here? No respect whatsoever going for 2-time Super Bowl winning, showed up Tom Brady. He won the Super Bowl.
It is one game, and you have to think that the Patriots, if they played that game 10 times, the Patriots might win it 7 times. But the Giants won it, and Eli Manning is a legit fantasy starter. He's not a legit NFL superstar. It is the pieces around him. The pieces that get the least respect are the running game and the coaching staff in New York for whatever reason. But that's why people undervalue Eli. And if you believe in that coach, you can get some value there.
You know what? With Eli Manning doing the things he does, he seems to get it done every week, especially in fantasy. He had one of the best years of his fantasy career, by the way, guys, last season. And here's the thing. That lets you know how deep this draft is in quarterback.
Right.
All right, there's a lot of great quarterbacks, which can allow you to delve into other positions that you're in your top picks this season because there's just a lot of depth there at that position.
Okay. Well, when we come back, we're going to get into more draft strategies that'll help you cruise into a championship. You are listening to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show here on 97.3 ESPN.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Now put your fantasy skills into the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Draft your team and then manage it through a 10-week regular season, a 1-week elimination round, and finally, if you're good enough, a 64-team tournament that will determine the first ever Fantasy Football Evolution champion. The winner of Fantasy Football Evolution receives $25,000, cash prizes paid to the top 16 players. Visit www.nextgenffe.com for more details. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and kickassfantasyfootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95 and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for 2 to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit powerplayfantasysports.com today.
And we are back. This is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show, and we are here to help you cruise into a championship. If you got any questions for the guys, you got a draft coming up, you need some strategy help, or need to know when to take someone, give us a call, 609-573-ESPN. That's 609-573-3776. We'll get you on the air. All right, guys, let's talk a bit about the drafts that are coming up, and let's get into some ADP. Let's talk about some of the first-round guys and see what you guys think. Let's start with Arian Foster. Any argument there that he's the number one guy?
None for me. I mean, he obviously took me to several championships last season. I believe he'll do the same for many fantasy teams this season.
Professor?
You know what? I think any of those top three guys, Foster, Rice, and McCoy, are a good pick at that top spot. I have a little wariness with Foster because of the risk with the injury, but I'd go Rice, but you can make a case for either guy.
Okay, and so basically we got through what are the top three, Foster, Rice, and McCoy. Do you agree with that, Commissioner? Those are the top three guys?
Yeah.
Maybe kind of interchangeable if you prefer one guy?
You know what? I kind of like them right in that order. Foster, Rice, McCoy. I think that's absolutely dead on. And any one of these guys will really help bolster that team, build the foundation on winning a championship.
But I do have to ask, you would put McCoy over Foster? Professor?
No, I would put Rice over Foster.
You would put Rice.
And then if I was picking second, I would take Foster. Even with the risk, he's got huge upside.
Okay.
Game breaker.
All right, and then we get our first quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, at number 4. Couldn't you argue that he should maybe be number 1?
You certainly can. I mean, the guy puts up ridiculous numbers. He gets it done every year. Super Bowl winning quarterback, fantasy Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Yes.
I mean, there's just no doubt, and should be the first quarterback taken in your draft.
Well, what do you think, Professor?
Definitely the first quarterback. I would actually put Ryan Matthews ahead of Aaron Rodgers at this spot.
Wow,
I have a
really?
little bit of trepidation taking a quarterback that early. I would take Rodgers at the 5. I like what I'm seeing and the lack of competition with Matthews out there, but you know what? It's in the top 5, and Rodgers is still by far the most valuable quarterback.
I love that you put my new man crush man, Ryan Matthews, ahead of Aaron Rodgers.
Your old man crush man?
He was. We broke apart. Now we're back together.
So now Ryan Matthews is actually number 6 on the list, below Calvin Johnson. Would you put him ahead of Calvin Johnson as well?
You know, as much as I had my little fun with the tight end, which statistically makes complete sense.
Right.
It is hard to not take a running back in the first round because there is a huge drop-off after those first few guys. And when you get past Matt Forte, you've got, either rookies or risk as far as the remainder of the guys that might be in your running back 1 spot.
Plus, the professor's very old school. But here's the thing. We talked about this last
right.
week. Madden curse. I believe in the Madden curse.
He's old school, and you're going to curses, throwing salt over your shoulder.
He's going to get hurt, and do not take him.
This is what you can expect all the way through your fantasy playoffs. The professor talking about the statistical likelihood of tight end, and Madden curse. Thank you.
Right. There you go. Great matchup. All right, let's go to the phone lines. We got Rodney from Galloway on the phone. Rodney, welcome to the show, man. What's your question?
How you doing? I was calling about I have a nice pick in my upcoming draft.
Okay.
And you guys are just talking about a running back before a quarterback.
Right.
Who would you pick at nice?
At 9?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's kind of tough, and that's in my article on tight end. 9 is where the value drops off. There are 9 legit first round picks out there, and then after that you are really rolling the dice. So no, seriously, if you go out there and take a look at the website, you'll see those 3 running backs along with Ryan Matthews, Chris Johnson, and Maurice Jones-Drew. So you got 6 running backs. We talked about Rodgers, Calvin Johnson as legit first-round guys. The only other legit first-round guy in the NFL, game breaker at quarterback,
Tom Brady.
Thank you, Commish.
Yeah.
He's got a great schedule this year. He had a tough schedule last year, put up ridiculous numbers. This year, his schedule's easy. So I look for Brady to put up even more ridiculous numbers. So if he's there at 9 and all the big-name running backs are off the board, he's the guy you got to go with.
There you go, Rob.
And right now in ADPs, he is going right about 9, so he should be there for you. And you know what, Rodney, appreciate the question. Hold on the line. You want to come to the Atlantic City Fantasy Football Fest, August 18th and 19th?
Yeah.
All right, you got a pair of free tickets. Hold on the line. Our producer will get your address, and we'll get those out to you. And you got to stop by and see us at our booth, though, all right?
Thanks a lot. I'll stop by, definitely.
All right, see you there, Rodney. All right, guys. So 9th pick, we're saying right about that 9th spot is where it really drops off and it becomes a bit of a gamble.
Well, that's really what caused me to take a look at that tight end, because I don't think there's much of a gamble with those 2 guys. Darren McFadden, Larry Fitzgerald, Trent Richardson are the guys that you're talking about in that next group of players. Drew Brees, who has lost his head coach for the year.
Right.
It really goes from rock solid kind of guys into a lot of question marks.
Listen, I think you're really pushing this a little bit too far.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's what made me take a look at the tight end strategy, because
it does drop off.
Yeah, Drew Brees is still a guy that you have to think that his talent's going to overcome Joe Vitt as his coach, but big question mark.
And
right?
now, if you were drafting this week, what about MJD? Right now, he's just slightly higher in the ADPs than Tom Brady, but
he's still not signed.
He's still not signed.
So he is in negotiations.
Serious.
And,
if you were drafting this week, would you take a gamble on him and still take him at that 8th spot?
I think at the end of the day, he's going to be there. And since Blaine Gabbert's still the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, MJD will continue to put up big numbers because all they're going to be able to do is run the ball.
Professor?
Yeah. I agree. That's really all that is in Jacksonville right now. Wide receivers holding out, wide receivers injured. Blaine freaking Gabbert as your quarterback. You gotta love MJD. The second he signs, he jumps right back into the top 10. I do have a little question mark next to him on my big chart, but I've still got him at number 8.
Yeah, I mean Justin Blackman's still holding out. One of the last rookies to hold out because of the DUI that he had. And that they want to put some clause in the contract to stay out of trouble. That's what the holdup is there. So this is all good news for MJD. He's playing into his negotiation.
All right, and we got Jen from our Blog Talk radio show on the line with us. Jen, man, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. How are you doing this morning?
Great, Jen. Great having you on.
It's good to be here again.
And go ahead. What was that?
This Hall of Fame game tonight. I can't believe it's already here.
It's time. First preseason, the Hall of Famers were inducted last night into the, Curtis Martin made it, so it's only the Hall of Pretty Good right now, but,
and Willie Roaf. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, football is back. It's great to finally watch some football and start getting into that fantasy mode.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And then the Fantasy Football Fest, it's less than 2 weeks away. Going to be broadcasting live from there, and we have some exclusive interviews with some of the greatest players of all time that are going to be there, so definitely excited for that.
Yeah. Now, Jen, you're going to be there with us, right?
Yes, I will be there all day Saturday and all day Sunday.
And who do we have lined up for an exclusive interview?
Well, we're still trying to get some confirmations, but we have been talking with LaShawn McCoy and trying to set things up with Phil Simms, and
Fantastic.
I just learned that, Lawrence Taylor is going to be there, so hopefully try to get something set up with him, and maybe we'll just come across something with Michael Vick or Joe Montana. So we'll keep everyone posted as the time grows closer. Definitely tune into our Blog Talk show on Tuesday night with Judge Jay Raffi and Jumpin' John Provost, and we're always open to questions, and this week we're going to be talking about the NFC particularly, and everyone feel free to join the chat room or call in for questions as everyone's been doing today.
And what time is that, Jen?
That's at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. And I have to say, with you getting the interviews and doing all this, Commish, you're about to lose your job.
Listen, Jen is a huge part of our Block Talk shows. We're glad to have you. You keeping those guys in line on Tuesday night, Jen?
Oh, yes. Don't worry.
All right. Good deal.
All right. Appreciate the call. And again, you can check Jen out and the guys Tuesday, Blog Talk Radio. You can find all the information on our site, kickassfantasyfootball.com. It's 9 p.m. Eastern. They break down all the fantasy football news and information, and especially as the season gets going, they'll break down the games and your waiver wire picks, all that kind of stuff. It's great stuff. Thanks for calling in, Jen.
Yep.
No problem.
Just a reminder to our listeners, in addition to our Sunday show here on ESPN, we've got that Blog Talk show Tuesday night. We got a Blog Talk show Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. And we've got our website full of projections, stats, articles, everything you need to cruise to a championship. Kickassfantasyfootball.com.
That's right. You can win a cruise for 2 to the Bahamas.
Win. You don't win it, man. You get it. All you got to do is sign up.
Yeah, you said win, like there's a contest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, you're about to get fired. You're about to lose your job.
Yeah, you sign up, $9.95 for the entire season. You get my waiver wire articles every Monday. You get Henry's trade articles. You get loads of statistics, the target report,
injury report. Yep.
You get a cruise. You get a free judgment from Fantasy Judgment. It's only $9.95.
Okay,
frankly,
guys.
It's worth it just for my waiver wire article, right?
But for less than $10,
there are no Madden curse articles on the site, though. I want to make that clear. No Madden
We're
curse
going to get
articles.
that Madden article up there.
All right.
That's how much I'm a believer.
Real quick, before we go, let's talk about some guys that aren't cutting it and maybe some guys to avoid. Let's start with Justin Blackman. He is still holding out. If you got a draft coming up, do you take any shot at him whatsoever?
No, stay away from this guy. Blaine Gabbert's the quarterback. We just touched on this, and he's a rookie. He doesn't even know the playbook yet, hasn't run any plays. Absolutely stay away from this guy.
You agree there, Professor?
Yeah, you really can't touch anybody in Jacksonville except for the running back, MJD, or if it's somebody else, you might take them in a late round just because they've got nothing else to do but run.
All right, and then Andre Johnson. While he's been a top 3 wide receiver the last few seasons, he's been having some injuries there. Are we moving him down the list? Does he want to maybe avoid this season, Professor?
Well, you know what? This is another guy with a groin injury. Love the groin injuries during camp. It's the source of most of my commentary here on kickassfantasyfootball.com. But no, it's another guy. He's up to his old tricks. He's injured. He's tweaked. He's a guy that's just a little fragile. And this Texans team, they've downgraded their defense. They're probably going to be scoring a lot more in 2012. If he's healthy, he's a great play. He's not healthy.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I mean, these injuries to these receivers, it starts with the gurn, then it goes to the legs. So keep your eye on this. And I'm a big Andre Johnson fan, but when you start getting these injuries, it's time to start looking at other players.
All right, and then Kenny Britt has the recent DUI and knee issues. The team's already starting to look past him. What are we thinking about Kenny Britt this year, Commish?
Yeah, I mean, look for Nate Washington and Kendall Wright to step up here and take the reins. And guess what? I think CJ2K returns to his former stature. Kenny Britt, with all these injuries with the DUI and the knee issues, I think they're going to, like you said, turn the page.
Okay, we talked about who aren't cutting the mustard. Last week we threw out Isaiah Peed as St. Louis Ram to keep an eye on this week. I want to throw you one little nugget before we go. Bilal Powell, who is the backup to Sean Green up in New York. He has been blowing the doors off in camp. Great late round play.
All right, so there you go. There's your little nugget. I want to thank everyone for listening this week to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show, and I want to thank our fantasy experts Henry Brick and Steve Wynn, and our kick-ass producer Scott Ewing for joining me. Join us here on 97.3 every Sunday at 9 a.m. all season long as we help guide you to a championship in your fantasy league. Also, check out our internet shows on Blog Talk Radio Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and Thursdays at 7. You can find all the details on our website, kickassfantasyfootball.com. Hey, if you're not playing fantasy football, you're probably spending too much time watching the Hallmark Channel.